Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Help me out. If you are a parent out there, raise your hand right now. Just go ahead and do it. It's fine. Nobody will know that you're doing it because a guy on a podcast told you to do it. I'll give you a minute. Go ahead and do that. Okay, I'm assuming you're doing that. How many of us remember when our little ones turned 1 year old, maybe even 2 years old, and we put the cake in front of them? We remember that, snapping the Kodak, snapping the iPhone pictures, doing all kinds of stuff. And what would happen inevitably when we got the cake in front of the little one? That's right, they would shove it in their face. And so in honor of that, Other People's Shoes is turning 2 years old. Super excited about that. So I just thought, what a better way to reenact such a monumental moment in our toddler's life than to have cake shoved in my face. Some have even called me a toddler at times. And so with that being said, I asked my daughter, who is amazing, to come up with a number. And her number is 35. I kind of helped a little bit, I will, full disclosure, but the number is 35. And so what 35 means to you the listener, is if we can get 35 brand new rankings of the show. So in other words, 35 people come out, rank the show. On January 29th, which is a Friday, last Friday of January, I will have a cake shoved in my face from my daughter. So if you'd like to participate in that, super simple. Check out our website, opspodcast.com. Look under the tab that says rank the show. Super easy to do. Rank the show right then and there. If we get 35 people to come out and rank the show, my daughter will shove cake in my face. So be a part of that. January 29th, we'll be doing a Facebook, Instagram Live. You don't want to miss out on that. And without further ado, here is the show.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. How are you today? It is still the new year. I think we can still say Happy New Year. By the way, when's the cutoff for that? Like, is it 3 weeks in? Is it 4 weeks in? Is it a month in? Like, when do we finally transition to not saying Happy New Year anymore? Somebody let me know, because that's actually always plagued me. And I know you probably didn't come here to hear that, but help me welcome in my guest. Even though he hails from, and it pains me to say this, but it's a good pain. It pains me to say this because he does hail from the Jayhawk state. But we're not going to talk about the Jayhawks today. We can't, because we got to talk about this other little place in Kansas called Manhattan, Kansas. And in fact, I have a story behind Manhattan, Kansas, and Kansas State. So we're going to talk about that shortly. But help me welcome him in. He's an author, but he's also a fellow podcaster. And what I love about him is he's not afraid to ask the follow-up question. And so help me welcome in my guest today, Michael Ashford. Michael, how are you today?
Doing well, Neil. Thank you so much. And yes, I do not claim the J word as my home state.
I love that.
Sunflower State, and I'm a Wildcat, and I bleed purple, and I'm from the Little Apple, not the Big Apple.
All of that. I love that. I love that. All of that so much, because I myself, there's only one game in my life, and I'm going to go a small story here. So there's one game in my life that I remember watching with a buddy of mine, North Carolina, Kansas, and I think it was in the Final Four, and Kansas beat North Carolina so bad. I think they even went on to win the national championship that year, so somebody will fact check me on that. But Kansas beat North Carolina so bad. My buddy and I are literally sitting in the room that I'm in currently, watching the game in stunned silence, because they had Hansborough that year on that team. They had lost, and they had everybody. And of course, the next year they come back and win it all. So that was probably like 2008.
That was the year Kansas State had Michael Beasley.
Yes, correct. You guys had Beasley that year. And you guys were pretty good.
Tyler Hansborough, I'll just put that out there.
Yeah. You what now about Tyler Hansborough? I missed that.
I said Michael Beasley was a better player than Tyler Hansborough.
Hands down. But in college, though, I don't know. Hansborough was pretty pretty legit. Psycho
That was a
T.
great year. That year had some great basketball players in college basketball for sure.
Yeah, that was back when college basketball was fun. I don't know about now.
As we record this, the college basketball season just kicked off, and my Wildcats lost. It's going to be a rough year for K-State.
You lost already.
And I knew it was going to happen. Like, K-State turned over nearly its entire roster from departures and transfers and graduations, and just such a young team. So this is going to be a rough one.
Well, I'm still excited to say, as we try to transition here, I'm still excited to say Carolina has never missed the NCAA tournament. Yeah. So thank you, COVID. It was good for us because we can now claim that we still have yet to miss the tournament. So there that is. So Michael, help us out with this, because I'm thinking about this. If I were to fly out to, well, first off, let's back up a step or so. So help us out with this. What style or what size shoes are we wearing? Let's help settle that, because we always like to ask that first.
Goodness, I don't have shoes on right now, man.
Oh my goodness. This is not good. Should have prepped you.
I'm a personal trainer, so if I am wearing shoes, you are usually finding me in some sort of workout gear. Now, I love a brand called NoBull, the NoBull Project, and I have a pair of their olive green high top trainers. Absolutely love them. I work out in those every single day. And, if I'm just going on just my casual shoes, I really like a pair of shoes called Strike Movement. They're another, fitness minded brand, but they're a little bit more of a casual brand. Like, hey, you can wear these whenever you want and get in a workout. So I love Nikes. I love my white Adidas shoes as well. I like a good pair of boots, but most of the time you're going to find me in some workout gear.
That's awesome. I know you're a fitness nut. Is that accurate to say?
That would be accurate to say.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Just checking. All right. I was looking at some Instagram and I'm like, man, dude works out. So that's awesome. So the reason why I bring up Kansas State is because I was on your show fairly recently, maybe, and we were talking about how you're from Kansas State, and we were laughing about that. And I actually used to sell to a place called Varney's back in the day, and that place very well. What is Varney's for those that don't know?
Varney's is in Manhattan, Kansas. There is a district right across the street from the Kansas State University campus, called Aggieville. Aggieville is the big bar scene. All the bars, all the dives that the students go to, that's Aggieville. And right in the middle of Aggieville is this huge building. Used to be an old theater that has been transformed into what's called Varney's. Varney's for many, many years was the student bookstore. So you would go to Varney's to buy your ridiculously overpriced books for your classes when you were a student at K-State. But a ton of great gear, like if you're going for a football game and you want a new shirt or a new hat or what have you, Varney's was, for many years has that. So they still are. They just done away with the bookstore side of things. It's really just kind of a K-State apparel and gear store now. So, but yeah, everybody in town, everybody who goes to K-State knows Varney's very well.
And so I sold cell phone accessories to Varney's. And so we were laughing about that when we initially had sat together. So I love the fact that there's still a K-State connection for me, because if I was going to pick a state or a team to root for in Kansas, it would definitely be the Wildcats, because I can't stand that other team. I just can't. I just can't.
Neither. That team that shall be unnamed.
There's really two teams that I shall be unnamed. That one that starts with a K, and then the other one that starts with a D. But if you look at it weird, it might look like a P. So anyway, so if I was going to, and I know you're not in Kansas anymore, right? You're now out in Colorado, which is amazing also. So if I were to come out to Colorado, hang out with you for a day, what would we go and do? What would you take me on?
For me, it's a hike. I live in Colorado and I hate the snow. Go figure. And there's actually like 6 inches of snow on the ground right now as I speak this. But I love hiking. Like, hiking in Colorado in the summer when there's no humidity, the temperature never gets too hot. You get up in the mountains and you get on these trails and you get lost. Your cell phone signal gets out or cuts out, and you are out there, and it is so restorative. It is so needed, and just I love it, man. I love being on the side of a mountain. The world kind of set before my eyes. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place to be in touch with. I pray a lot on my hikes. I enjoy the hikes up the 14,000 foot mountains that we have here in Colorado. And I get up to the top of a mountain, and what better way to connect with God than to sit on top of a mountain and pray? Man, it's remarkable stuff. I would take you on a hike, maybe not on a 14,000 foot hike, but I'd take you on a hike.
How many miles up is that?
The longest hike that I have done from the trailhead to the summit was 7 miles. So 14 miles round trip. I'll say easier ones, you're going probably 4 to 6 miles round trip. So 3 miles up, 3 miles down. It's, yeah, I'd say that's about average.
But the air's thinner, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. So it's not like an Oregon air. It is a thinner air up there. Yeah.
It is very thin. And usually the trailhead's starting somewhere around 10,000 feet. So you're not climbing from 0 up to 14,000 feet. And yeah, already at 10,000 feet, I mean, you're feeling it, especially if you are somebody from a much lower elevation state.
Or asthmatic, maybe. Who knows?
Or asthmatic, yes, I don't recommend it.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that you get out and get on top of a mountain. To me, there's, I talk so often, and I know you do as well, but I talk so often of this perspective, this unique perspective that I think our world is desperately lacking, desperately needing, desperately wanting, and secretly craving, but don't want to have those conversations. So I'm thinking about this too. Imagine for a second, somehow we get on a plane together and we don't know each other. We don't know the K-State reference. We don't know the Colorado piece of it. We don't know the podcasting piece of it. What am I going to notice first about you?
Usually I'm going to have a smile on my face. I'm just a happy guy, man. Like, there's not a whole lot that gets me angry, and I've got a lot of energy, so I'm usually moving in some way. Now, you can't always do that on an airplane, and I hate being on an airplane for that reason. I feel boxed in, like I'm constantly moving and twitching. People sitting next to me probably can't stand me, but yeah, I'm probably reading. So smiling while reading a book may be a little bit weird, but if I'm not reading, I'm probably smiling and moving in some way. Yeah.
So I'm going to notice, obviously, I'm going to notice your smile. I'm going to notice there's something about you. And to me, I'm that guy on the plane that probably people don't like either, because I'm the guy that sits next to you and I'm like, hey, so what do you do? What are you all about? Like tell me your whole life story. Like, tell me this. Tell me, like, if you're wearing something K-State, I might, make a reference to that. Or if you're wearing, a Royals hat, hopefully you're not. But if you were, I might make a reference to that. Like, hey, do you know that the Giants beat the Royals in the World Series? Are you aware of that? I might mention that. But outside of that, are you going to tell me that you're an author?
Oh, not unless you specifically ask.
Okay.
No, I really wouldn't. It's funny. I've written a book and I've barely done a thing to promote it. I really felt like it was something that I wanted to get out of me and put down, pen to paper, so to speak. But once it got done, it was like, okay, that was fun. Now, that being said, I have a mind to write another book completely different than that. But I just think it was the process of getting it out of me that I needed to do. And if a few people purchase the book, great. That's great. I hope it helps. I hope it's an interesting read, but I'm probably never going to serve that information up right from the get-go.
You're not going to lead off with, by the way, I'm an author. I don't know if you know this or not, but you're sitting next to a man who's been published. I also can take you on a, 1,200 mile hike. I mean, just let me know what you're interested in. And I mean, that's never going to, that seems very like, I don't know what that seems like.
I could put you through a workout. Like I could like break down your body really quickly.
Something about crying while working out doesn't ever sound fun to me.
Probably not.
So, but where did the book come from? I mean, you talk about that. You talk about that you never really wanted to kind of, I don't know, market it per se. I mean, from the sound of it, but where does that come from? Because I've heard people say that. Well, there was just a book in me. This just had to come out of me. I mean, I've heard that verbiage from people, but help me understand that.
So the book is called The Involved Man, a call for men to step up and fight for the things that matter most. And it serves two purposes, one of which is kind of hard to achieve if I don't promote it. But I wanted to speak to men to shake the cage a little bit and say, we as a collective are not doing well at showing up in the relationships that we say matter most to us, in the relationships with ourselves and finding our purpose, in the relationships with the people around us who we say mean the most to us, our spouses, our children, our friends, our colleagues. And we're not showing up in the way that a professional should. We're not tying these priorities together in a way that presents a man in his true form of masculinity, which is to be in selfless service to others. Now, that being said, so that's a message I wanted to get out there. That being said, I didn't want to write a book that just shook my finger at somebody and shook my finger at men and say, like, you guys do better and follow my example. So the book it's not a biography, but I weave in stories of times in my life where I failed to live up to that standard of what it means to be an involved man. The caveat to that is I also tell you what I did to make it right, what I did, what I learned from the situation, what I did to better serve those around me and those relationships that I had harmed or broken. I didn't want it to, it's capturing a lot of my failures. It really is. And that was the piece that I just needed to get out of me was, look, I'm trying as much as anybody else. Here's how I think about it in the greater context of manhood.
Why was that so important?
So if you read the book, you would know, obviously, my struggle and search for finding my own purpose in my life and the challenge there. But going beyond that, before our daughter was born, so my wife and I have two children, a boy and a girl. Our daughter was the second child. And when our daughter came along, my wife left her career to stay at home with our kids. Childcare was expensive and her salary wasn't really going to cover, the childcare. So we said, hey, we're in a financial position where you can stay home. You can leave your job. Well, her job was to be an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault.
Oh my gosh. How could she leave that? Sorry, but
I've always said she has the two most challenging jobs on the face of the planet, mother and that.
Yeah. No, that sounds like very noble work, by the way.
And it's incredibly, it can be incredibly fulfilling and incredibly heartbreaking at the same time. And, so I'm hearing the stories that she's bringing home, not to the degree, like she's not telling me the intimate details, but I'm hearing the stories of the things that men, the vast majority of domestic violence and sexual assault is perpetrated by men. I'm hearing these stories of men who are doing horrendous things to their spouses, to their children, to the people they say they love. It's not love at all. But I'm hearing this and feeling helpless. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling like there's got to be something that I can do, because this is a men's issue. Domestic violence and sexual assault is a men's issue, and it's going to take men stepping up and correcting and guiding other men to get it to stop. It shouldn't take, God bless my wife and the other women that she worked with in the work that they do, but it shouldn't be on them to stop domestic violence and sexual assault. So the why, this is a part of my response to that, to get this message out there to men that we need to step up and do better in our relationships. Flat out. We're failing at that as men.
No, I think that's incredible too. I think that's incredible from a lot of standpoints. One, from the standpoint of, I just think, like you're saying, I think men in general don't have great role models. You know, we look to an athlete. You know, we were teasing about Beasley and Tyler Hansbrough. You know, I don't know them personally. Maybe you know Beasley. I don't know. But I don't know Tyler Hansbrough personally. So if he's ever listening, Tyler, you're welcome to come on anytime you want. I'll make room for you. But my point is I looked at his work ethic. I look at his ethics at Carolina. The dude did not work any harder than anybody had ever seen at Carolina as far as gameplay goes. You know, but I look at your guy Beasley, not judging, but just looking at him. He was a little rough around the edges, right? I mean, yeah. I don't know his role models growing up. I know he had tremendous talent. I know he had an amazing ability to jump out of the gym. Probably, as you said, probably a more talented athlete as far as like if we're comparing him and Hansbrough. Okay. But I also wonder, Michael Beasley was one and done at K-State. He did not stick around. He saw the dollars of the NBA, the lottery ticket, if you will, and took full advantage of it. I think he was second overall in the draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that. I can't even remember now.
I'd have to fact check that too. Yeah, right. But Hansbrough hung around for 4 years,
right?
Because he was invested in the Carolina program. But I also know this about Tyler Hansbrough. His parents came to most Carolina games. I mean, Missouri to Carolina is not too far. But my point is that he had that nest egg, that family unit around him, mom and dad loving him. I don't ever remember shots of Michael Beasley's parents sitting in the stands cheering Michael Beasley on. Go K-State. You know, I don't know what the cheer is, but you know what I mean? But to your point, if we don't have that family unit around us, if we don't have that support system around us, what happens?
We lose the ability to, I think, first and foremost, empathize with people. When we don't have somebody who we have a strong connection with a strong relationship where we know their backstory and they know ours, we lose the ability to speak truth into their lives. Like our sons and daughters may idolize the next, great sports athlete that comes along.
Zion Williamson. I can't even believe I just said his name.
But our sons and daughters are never going to, on rare occasion, have the ability to understand that person's truth and them understand theirs. And so you get into a situation where you're idolizing somebody, or you are looking to somebody for mentorship or guidance, or just you want to be like Mike, quote unquote, that you have no idea their story, their background, their history. And when fathers, especially, because this is what I'm most passionate about, when fathers are not in the home, our boys and our daughters, our boys and our girls lose the connection and the value that a father brings to that relationship. And the consequences of that have been studied and scientifically proven. You are more likely to have a child that suffers from mental illness and depression. You're more likely to have a child that suffers from poor grades in school. They're more likely to be overweight or obese. They're more likely to have bad sexual practices at a young age. They're more likely to run and get in trouble with the law when the father is not present in the home. And so when we lose the family unit, when we lose the connections of the people around us, the people with experience who can speak truth and guidance and direction into our lives, that's where these things cascade down through generations.
So I got to ask then, how was your relationship with your dad?
Wonderful. And still is.
And still is. Okay. So see, that's what I was thinking, is I'm thinking like maybe he didn't have the greatest dad growing up, and maybe he didn't have the greatest father figure. So he's now seen the need for this, but it's quite the opposite.
Now, I will say it's not 100% across the board positive. Like, my parents got divorced when I was 27. 26 or 27, somewhere in that time frame. I can't even remember now. And that was that, even as an adult man who was getting ready to be married himself, like that crippled me emotionally for a long time. I had put so much value and stock in the fact that I had parents who were together, who were in the home, that I could always go home and find my dad and my mom, in their traditional spots in the house. Like that level of that was a security blanket for me. And losing that, and actually it was younger than that, because I was just getting ready to be married when they got divorced. So I saw my relationship with my father in two different ways. One, I saw his relationship with my mom and how I didn't want to repeat that. And so his example was actually one that showed me what not to do. And I saw his relationship with me and my two sisters. I have an older and a younger sister. And I saw quite possibly the best example of a father's love for his children, and the overwhelming lengths that a father will go to provide, to guide, to direct, to influence positively his children's lives. Two different things. And I always had that in my mind, that whenever I get married, I don't want to be like my dad. Flat out. I don't want to be like my dad and how I saw my parents interact as a couple for, the majority of my life. And yet, and I still have a fantastic, wonderful, beautiful relationship with my dad. He showed me and modeled the example of what it looks like to have, a father who is involved in his kids' lives.
Wow, that's tough stuff, though, right? I mean, when you have that image, that idea of someone, and it gets shattered or it gets shifted, it can be really, really overwhelming. How did you kind of deal with all of that and reconciling that?
It took several years. It was made even more painful by the fact that here I am getting ready to start my marriage, and my parents' marriage is ending. That was a tough pill to swallow, to use a cliche. I turned to faith. Quite honestly, I turned to my faith. I turned to God. I relied a lot on my wife and discussions with her. And I had at the time a great group of guy friends that I could have really honest conversations with about, and this was as I went into it and was still working through, this is several years after my parents' divorce, but guys that I could have real, honest, authentic, vulnerable conversations with. And that's something that, as I write in my book, like, we're not very good at doing. Guys are not good at getting together and actually speaking the things that are on their mind, and not just diving into the latest sports score or the weather or job, and they attach and assign their identity to all these other things without getting to the root and the core of who they actually are. And I say that, and we've been joking about sports the whole times, but you have to also have a level of closeness. Like, this is the second time you and I have spoke, so our conversations are going to be different than if I have a true guy friend who has been with me through these types of instances. And it really, really is important that a man be involved in that way with other men.
You almost need a climbing buddy from the sound of it.
I think that'd be great.
or a workout buddy. I mean, is that a thing? I don't work out very often, but
workouts for me, I'll use the term sacred. They're a little bit sacred.
Okay.
I work out sometimes with my wife, and that's about the only workout partner that I want, because other than that, I just want to put my headphones in and focus on my workout. But yeah,
I get it.
I'll go climbing all day with anybody.
All right, just checking. I'm the same way, though. Back when I was running pretty actively, I had a couple of friends from church that found out I was running, and they're like, "Hey, can we run with you?" And I was like, No, you can't. And they're like, "Please, come on. I just want to come out and run with you, like just a couple of times." I'm like, "All right, fine." So I conceded. And I remember the first time going out, and I started putting my headphones in, and my buddy's like, What are you doing? I thought we were gonna talk while we ran." And I was like, no, I don't talk while I run. No, I don't do that. And he's like, oh, come on, man. I'm like, fine. So I get done with the run. It was the worst run of my life. I hope he hears this, Chris. I hope you hear this. But I say that because there are certain times that you need that guy, right? There are certain times that you need that person that can spur you on, that can cheer you on, that can kind of rub shoulders with you. But there's also those moments you got to get alone and you got to really figure out where you want to go. How the heck have you found that in your life where you have to have that balance where, you know, you're with people, but yet you need to get alone to really, like you said, you know, get up on that mountain, pray and really reflect and look down and gain that perspective. But is there a good and is there a bad to both?
I think so. I go hiking and climbing with my family, with friends all the time. And then there are times where I'll take a Friday off from work and go up into the mountains by myself. And I think both are equally necessary for me, equally restorative. I'm obviously thinking and doing different things. But, you know, I connect with people in such an amazing way when I'm out on a hike with them, whether it's my family or like just this past year, this past fall, my son turned 10 and for his 10th birthday, he wanted to climb a 14er with me. So I got to do that with my son. Like
help me with that. A 14er is what?
It's a 14,000 foot peak.
Okay. Thank you. I assume that, but I just want to make sure I was on the right track with that.
Yeah. I use the jargon and forget to clarify myself.
That's
sometimes.
okay. That's all right.
But yeah, so I got to do that with him, and we got to talk the entire way as breathlessly as we could, but to guide him, to tell him what to do, and to make sure, like, how are you feeling? If you feel this way, let's stop. Like, you know, or the opposite. Hey, let's not take a break yet. Let's push through this. I know your legs are burning right now, but there's a point up here where the trail gets a little bit easier. Let's make it there, and let's work through this tough time. And dude, like the people coming down the mountains are like high-fiving him and just be like, "Oh, bud, like great job, man." And you just the smile on his face. It just fills a father's heart, man. It really does. And the ability to put yourself in those situations where you can be there for your kid like that, it's indescribable. And to then have the experience of standing on top of a mountain and literally look down on the world from, 14,200 feet and just be in awe of what you've just accomplished. And to do it with your son it's indescribable, man. It really is. And at that point, and I feel this every time that I get on a mountain peak, or when I'm in a plane, or when I see a photo of the Earth from space, it all just looks so peaceful. And up there, like there's no social media and there's no fighting and arguing, and the Earth looks as it was intended to look. And you just have this moment of realization that, like, the things that fill my day and the things that I worry about don't matter right now. And that's okay. And I can be at peace with that. And to share that moment with your son, with your child, it's like I said, it's indescribable, man.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine having that moment. What that must feel like. I can't even really fathom it, really, because that just sounds so amazing. By the way, you sold that very well. Not that you're trying to sell that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about this, as when 2020 was going on, especially first part of March, we teased about Final Four and basketball being shut down, but everything gets shut down. All the sports get shut down, buildings and businesses get shut down. People are sent home working. I mean, it just was like one thing after another just kept getting shut down. And it just seemed like, some would say, that all of the distractions of life, all of the things that were vying for our attention got shut down. Even TV programs. I mean, shows went into lockdown. Like, no shows were putting out new content, new episodes, or, none of that was happening. So you had reruns of, who knows what. But my point is that in that shutdown period, Do you ever feel like that we as a society, and maybe you can speak to this personally, that you have to have that shutdown period in order to do what?
I do. I do think we have to have that shutdown period. And I think really early on when those shutdowns were happening, we as a collective figured out really quickly that we really can only worry about and think about the things that we can control. Now, as things went on and as the quarantines and isolations and lockdowns and restrictions continued and the political season added on top of that, we lost sight of that. We lost sight of the ability to worry about and focus on the things that we can control. But early on, remember, we could control getting out of the house and going on walks and smiling with our neighbors and saying hi more often. We could control the physical space that we were in to make it as appealing to work in for the foreseeable future, because we had no idea, right? Like, we learned to focus on those things. We focused on family. We focused on, being healthy as much as we could, and we lost that. And when you don't routinely go back to that, it's just like being in the gym, and that's the place where I go, where I know I can control these things.
Because that's shut down too. So hopefully you have a home gym.
Oh, I do. I'm fully outfitted, man.
I can only imagine, but yeah, I'm sure. Anyway, sorry.
But the gym to me and working out and fitness is the perfect laboratory for understanding how you're going to show up in the rest of the world when things get tough. Because in the gym, only you know the effort, the level of effort that you put into it. Only you understand truly how hard you worked. There's no scientific measurement that anybody can do with you to understand the level to which you exerted yourself in the gym. And it's the same thing in everywhere else. Only you understand and know your true feelings about a situation. Are you responding with hateful words and negative talk because you're scared of something? Well, that's often the case. When you default to name calling, or you default to yelling, or you default to accusations without asking questions, often that's a fear response, but only you know that. And if you never say, you know what, this is frustrating to me because I am scared right now. I am scared of this. I'm scared of losing this. I'm scared of feeling like this. We've got to be better about that. And it's only in those moments where we escape and pull within ourselves to actually examine what we feel like, much like in the gym. We've got to have those things. Otherwise, we're constantly being bombarded with messages on this. We're constantly being, emails and text messages and social media dings on our phone. And oh my gosh, somebody's actually trying to call me to talk about, oh, did you hear what the latest politician said? Like, it just never stops. You've got to take moments to pause and withdraw yourself and explore what it is you're actually putting into the world. And is it truthful? Is it honest?
But don't you think we as people, and maybe you as a person, I know I'm forgetful. I'm very forgetful at times. I forget, I don't know. I just forget things. I forget where my keys are, especially right now, because it's like I don't ever go anywhere. So it's like, where did I put them last, right? I have a memory spot right behind me, because if I don't, I know I'm never going to remember where I put my keys or my wallet or my phone or my whatever. So I have that like designated spot, which is amazing, by the way. Recommend that highly. But what I guess I'm trying to get at is, I think so many times once time passes, I forget. I forget that I need to remember to, not that I need to ever forget to love my wife. I mean, that's a given. I should be, right? Or love my daughter. But the moments in life that I forget about, the specific areas where I was like, man, there was that one time we did this, we forget those things, right? How do you think someone should not forget those things or not take for granted those things in life? How would you do that?
I can only speak to myself.
Right. I know. Yeah, for sure.
I do it by building habits. So much like I have the habit of getting up at 5:30 every morning, going down to my basement and working out 6 days a week. That is a habit that is as ingrained in me. Like I would wake up at 5:30, even if my alarm didn't go off. Just like taking time. I love John Eldredge, and I had the amazing opportunity to speak to John Eldredge on my show. And he has, an app called the Pause app where you set timers at 2 different times during the day to just pause for 10 minutes and reflect on what you've done or what you're getting ready to do, or to withdraw yourself from the race of life and being able to sit down and think about, how am I feeling right now? Or, man, that thing that just happened to me, that was really cool. I don't want to forget that. Working in much the same way, habits throughout your day. Your wife, I would strongly urge every man who is married to continue to date your spouse. And if that means you have to schedule date nights or you have to schedule events, and of course we all fall off of it. It's probably been several weeks since my wife and I went on a date. And as I say this out loud, we need to have a date night again. Even though we can't go out to restaurants right now, we've done date night over the summer where we just sat in a park and talked, and we had, burgers, those things. But even if you need to schedule those things out to where you build that habit, eventually you don't need those little reminders. Eventually it becomes something that you just intuitively do because it is who you are.
No, I think that's the key, especially going forward now, is now that everything's shut down, now that everything's kind of sort of maybe coming open again, we have to remember the fact of, remember what it was like. I mean, I've had so many parents say to me, and you have kids too, so you probably know this too, but the homeschooling life, you're trying to juggle your career, you're trying to make sure your kids are doing their classwork, you're trying to do everything at once. And I've had parents say to me, man, I cannot wait for them to go back. I'm like, yeah, but think about the moments. You're not going to have this back again. I mean, when in our history have we ever had our kids at home doing a collective homeschool? Some of the homeschool parents are like, I don't know what you're talking about, Neil. I've done it for years, which are probably, high five to you. I don't know how you do it, homeschool parents. High five. But I say that because I think there's something powerful about setting in the habit, setting in the routine, setting in the expectation of, hey, this is how my day is going to go, and really making your schedule work for you rather than your schedule working you, right?
Yeah, and some things we can't control. We can't control when our school decides to close down, and our kids all of a sudden are going to be at home for the next 2 weeks, and we've got to figure out how to teach them the lesson plan that we get the night before. And again, it goes back to, as I'm sure you've repeated often on this show, empathy, being able to put yourself in the teacher's shoes. Yes, we may get frustrated that, the lesson plans don't get delivered until the night before, and we don't have time to even look them over before we're expected to teach them to our children. But what about the teacher? What are they going through? How are they having to adjust to this? Giving other people the same grace that we want to be extended ourselves, in the same way that we want our boss to extend us grace because we now have to teach our children. We've got to extend the teacher grace because they're trying to figure out a way to manage 15 to 20 parents and all their questions and all the kids' questions. It is grace that is extended out from you that you would hope to receive back.
No, I totally agree. And I love that. So a couple of things as we begin to kind of wrap up. Where on earth did you ever think of the idea of the follow-up question? Where does that come from? And the premise of the show and getting it launched and all of that.
So I'm in marketing now, and side business of being a personal trainer. But I graduated from college from Kansas State with a degree in mass communications and journalism. And my first job out of college was at a newspaper, and actually a very well-known newspaper. If you've ever heard the name William Allen White, it was his newspaper. He was an author, a politician, a very outspoken newspaper man early in the 1900s. And so when my wife and I got together and were going to get married, and we started to talk about having, what our future looked like, having children, the hours of a newspaper man do not lend themselves very well to being around and being involved and at home. Everything typically, deadlines are late at night and the paper is due early in the morning, and just I never wanted to just be passing my wife as she was coming in the door and I was leaving, and same with my children. So I left the journalism world, but I never left the passion. I never left the love of asking people questions, to hear their story and to tell their story in a way where you really got to know who they were. And, podcasting offers up the ability for me to do that. And I had it, especially as we got into the current political season. I just noticed more and more people were just shouting their opinions at each other, rather than what I believe happens in the course of a healthy argument is we ask questions of each other. We went through a traumatic and tumultuous we've gone through and are still in the middle of a traumatic and tumultuous year, last 12 months as a people. You've got a pandemic. You've got a violent, in many instances, reaction to unjust and inhuman actions in our country. You had a really, really charged election and political season. You had these major events that just trauma after trauma after trauma, and we're all shouting at each other like, you listen to me, you've got to do this thing, like this is the way it needs to be done. And I wanted to say, whoa, before we start screaming our opinions at each other, can we ask each other more questions to better understand where we're coming from, to understand the other person's point of view? And I figured, hey, I used to do this professionally as a journalist. Why not do it as a podcaster? So I jumped back in with my second podcast, which is the follow-up question. That's a long answer to your question, but that's where it comes from. I just want people to ask the next question before they speak.
No, and I think that wasn't, by the way, that was super good. Super great, actually. I shouldn't say good. That was probably better English. But I love that. And I love the fact that you ask really hard questions. And I think, to me as a host, it's always tough, because you're always like, man, what do I ask? Am I asking the right question? Am I asking a good question? Now you're trained. I mean, you're schooled, you're trained. I mean, K-State, I mean, it's not North Carolina, but I mean, it's a Division I school at least. But no, I'm teasing. But I think there's something about that there's this unique ability that you have. And I think you do a great job drawing questions out of people and really getting your listeners engaged as well. So I really respect that about you.
I greatly appreciate it. That's what I want. And here's the thing, man, as an encouragement to you and anybody else listening, people want to tell their story. It's often that they don't feel they have permission, quote unquote. Like there's a stigma around talking about yourself or getting, being more open and vulnerable. But if you're asked the question and the person who's asking the question genuinely wants to know the answer, like every question that I ask, I genuinely want to know that answer out of my guests, because it gives me a deeper insight and window into who they are as a person. Like that's the thing, is like the people that we're arguing with on social media, they're people. And the thing that social media has done is it has removed, even just like you and I are on a Zoom call right now, but I can see your facial features. I can see the way that you respond to my answers. You can see the way that I respond to your questions. We hear voice inflection. We see the brightening of the eyes or the furrow of a brow. Like that stuff is important to human communication. And so when I ask a question, like that is my window into understanding who you are, because I pick up on all the other things, man. Like it is so sorely needed right now that we get uncomfortable by asking uncomfortable questions, because we all feel uncomfortable, right?
Well, I think you're right on with that. And I love everything you're saying there, because of the fact, and I've said this for years, I can't read tone. Yeah. I can't read written tone. I can't read a tone in an email. I can't read a tone in a text. I can't read a tone in a comment. I can't read tone in a post. I just can't.
So
Have you ever had sarcasm in a tweet or a message been misread?
Oh.
Absolutely. Like sarcasm is one of the hardest things to get across, and yet we all continue to do it.
there needs to be a sarcasm emoji. I keep writing Apple on that, but no luck. But so man, you're awesome. I just really appreciate that. So how can people go and listen? I know you're not on here per se to promote the book or to, sell the book per se, but how can people go and do that if they're interested?
Well, the book, you can actually go to theinvolvedman.com, and that'll take you to a landing page that I've got on my fitness site that will link you to Amazon and Barnes & Noble or from the publisher site, and you can find all of that information.
They can't buy it at Varney's?
You can't buy it at Varney's.
Oh, that's really sad. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
And then for me, and the work that I do with the follow-up question, it's just thefollowupquestion.com, and you can find it on all the podcast platforms, or you can go to my website and find it there.
And we, of course, will link all of that in our amazing show notes. So only fitting that we play a game together, because I feel like we are somewhat kindred spirits, right? You're in the same kind of sphere, the same kind of lane I'm in, trying to get people to understand, trying to get people to gain that empathy and that perspective. I feel like we're running in the same lane at least.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So Look at this amazing cup I hold in my hand. Can you see that okay? Is that coming across all right in the Zoom?
I see it. I see it very clearly.
All right, just checking. I couldn't find the purple Wildcat cup. I don't know. Maybe it's still at Varney's. Anyway, so here we go. We're going to play this game called Senseless. By the way, Michael, you do know we have 5 senses, right? You're aware of that?
I am aware.
As a personal trainer, you should know the senses that are crying. So I'm going to roll on your behalf. So since you're not here, you're in Colorado. That is so loud. I never realized how loud it is when I edit it back. I'm like, man, I got to get the dice roll away from the cup. So you got number 6. You can see that there, which is our wild card. So be aware. So here you go. So wild card category, your wife and children, sorry, my friend, do not get to come with you, but you get to have dinner or a meal. Some people don't like dinner. So you get to have a meal or dinner, your choice. One person. Only one. Don't try to sneak in others. People have tried. No. One person, dead or alive. Who is it with? First off, where are you going to dinner or a meal, and then who are you going to sit with?
Oh, we're probably going to eat sushi.
Oh, there you go.
That's probably where we're gonna eat. And if you're ever in Denver, I highly recommend Hapa Sushi.
I was just gonna say name drop here.
Let's name drop here. I'm really just stalling because I'm trying to figure out who I would say here.
And I also picked that up too, so I wasn't gonna call you on that, but you said it, so I will echo that.
I could go a couple different. I'm thinking like I could go the former journalist route. I could go the fitness route. I could go the sports route. But what I really think that what I would do, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Abraham Lincoln. The leadership and the character and the nature of the decisions that he had to make in his presidency and during that time. I want to know more. And I had a history minor or concentration in college, and I just can't get enough of it. So I'd go Abraham Lincoln.
So a friend of mine is a history teacher. He's done that in his past, public school teacher. His name is Jacob. And he was telling me the other day, he said, go Google a picture of Abraham Lincoln when he first gets inaugurated. And then look at him 4 years later.
Yeah.
And look at the difference in the photos. It's staggering, the amount of weight and pressure and just stuff that was put on Lincoln. And you can see it. You can physically see it. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I highly recommend others to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So
I definitely have. You can see the weight of an entire country on that man's face. It's remarkable.
It's just staggering that people were that awful back then. And of course, we're probably equally as awful now. So
we all have flaws, and the sooner we realize that, the sooner we can move on from it.
Well, I'm going to give you one last final thought. So it goes to you. I don't know what you're going to say, but you get a final thought. Whatever you want to say is yours. There you go.
Oh goodness. Just what we were talking about earlier. Ask more questions. When you feel anger building up, and like when you read that social media post, or when you hear, a family member say something that doesn't quite jive with what you believe, your first reaction and your first response, of course, is always going to be, like I'm mad, or this angers me. Take a breath, count to 10. I know it's really hard to do, but 10 seconds might feel like a long time. It's really not. It's 10 seconds. And just ask a question. Why do they feel that way? Why would they respond that way? What could be happening in their life that they would think that, or say that, or do that? And as much as you don't like what they said, seek first to understand who they are and why they believe the way that they do by asking questions, and put a pause button on your immediate response to throw out your side of the argument, because that's never going to change anyone's mind. It is scientifically proven that if you have ever argued for or against a particular issue or stance or idea, it is almost impossible to change your mind. The only way that we change our mind is when we can step inside someone else's shoes, have empathy for someone else, and understand their perspective, their experience. Your experience and your opinions can never negate the experience and opinions of someone else, because it's their story, it's their life, it's their experience. The only way we gain empathy is by asking more questions.
Wow. That was powerful. That was powerful stuff. So I don't even have a takeaway. I would just say go back and rewind that and listen to that again, and then listen to it again, and then listen to it again. Because I'm just curious today as we close out today. Ask yourself this deep question, and I think Michael did a great job articulating that. Has anybody ever won an argument on social media? Like, really, show of hands, have you really convinced somebody to your way of thinking on social media ever by your post or your comment? Share that with me right now. Just email the show, voicemail the show, whatever you want to do to prove to me that you have proof. And I'll tell you this, if you do that and you have proof, I mean real proof, I'll give you $100 cash, because I don't think you do. And that's my point, is no one has ever been changed by what you've said on social media. They just haven't. In an argument, they just haven't. I don't care who you are. So today, ask yourself this question. Am I asking enough questions in my life? Am I getting enough understanding? Am I getting enough perspective? Because if I'm not, and you're not, why aren't we? It's that proverbial why. It's very annoying, I know. But ask yourself that question, especially in this new year, this new you. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be remembered for? And if you're not being remembered, why not? Because you have the power to change that right now. So just ask yourself those questions as we wrap up today. Just want to remind you of this as we walk so often, as we say, remember, when we walk in other people's shoes, we really do get a different perspective on life. I want to thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.
Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for listening this last week. Hopefully it's been a good week for you. Hopefully you can take Michael's advice. And by the way, I think it is solid advice. There's something powerful about unplugging and getting on top of a mountain and really looking out over nature and being unplugged. Something about that. I don't know. In this fast-paced world that we're in, it is kind of nice to unplug every now and then. So great advice. Go tap into that mountaintop experience and let me know how that was for you. If you got an opportunity to do that, I would love, of course, to hear about that. You, of course, can connect to me through our website, opspodcast.com. That, of course, is a great place for past, present, and future episodes. That's where they are. That's where you can go and listen. And, of course, while you're there, leave us a voicemail. We would love to hear about your mountaintop experience. Speaking of always staying connected and the connections that can be made, let me introduce you to a podcaster, but also a very good friend of mine. And, in fact, she has, in my mind, a very unique story, and in fact, a very scary story. And in fact, here's a little sneak preview of next week's episode.
I woke up to, like, you know, he would watch one too many cop shows, and listeners, you can't see me, but he literally had a flashlight in one hand and a gun in the other, and said a bunch of stuff. I don't remember what it was. Put the gun to my head, and
that's right. We're going to be traveling out to Florida. Now, it seems like every time we go to Florida, something amazing happens, and this, of course, is no exception. Help me welcome in next week my guest, Amy Watson. She's going to be stopping by to tell us about her story. And let me tell you, it is riveting. And her life experience and the PTSD that everything has come with it, you are not going to want to miss next week's episode. So stay tuned for that. That, of course, will take place on Wednesday, opspodcast.com. While you're on the website, of course, as I mentioned already, you can leave us a voicemail, but also you can connect through our social medias, that of course being Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under the handle, do people still say handle? I hope so, at OPS Podcast Show. Little different than our website, but OPS Podcast Show. Just remember this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Join me right back here next Wednesday as we walk in other people's shoes.